Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Wednesday drawing session with me, Frank Cho. There's my trusty Pentel mechanical pencil with zero point 0.7 HB millimeter lead, my kneaded eraser, and my favorite paper to draw on, Strathmore Bristle Board 300 series with vellum surface. Now, today is very special. Today is my 100th video on my YouTube channel. So I decided to draw my favorite character of all time, which is King Kong. And I've always loved King Kong since I was a little kid, since I saw the 1933 original black and white version. Now, King Kong was created by Miriam C. Cooper, and it actually went through a lot of variations, but essentially they came to the basic story is a giant ape. Giant ape they found in a mysterious island, and then they transported to New York, which ultimately was killed by man when it escaped New York. So the reason I love King Kong is I love drawing monsters, and I've always have. So a lot of people think that I'm just this pinup guy, that I draw nothing but women and pinups and other sexy stuff. But actually, my first love has always been drawing monsters, and that all started with King Kong, and King Kong and all the Ray Harryhausen movies. So the thing that I love about King Kong is essentially a giant ape. That is just so visually impactful, especially when I was a little kid. And not only that, King Kong, this giant ape, is in the jungle fighting dinosaurs. So I love King Kong when he was in the Skull Island. But when he came to New York City, I kind of, I thought it was fine, but I prefer King Kong staying on Skull Island, beating up dinosaurs and stuff like that. I have a very have a very childlike taste when it comes to monsters. So anyway, I'm a big monster fan. With this image, I decided to draw King Kong fighting a dinosaur. Now, I decided to have King Kong like jumping on top of a dinosaur ready to strike. Now, the first pose, I didn't like it because I thought having the tail, that vertical tail, and the vertical position of his right fist was, it just didn't look right. So I basically flipped the image where now King Kong is coming down with his fist on the left side instead of the right side. So the raised fist and the raised tail kind of has a nice counterbalance to it. So when it comes to drawing, it's all about balance. And again, so I had this rough image in mind. So I wanted to draw like a T-Rex running, kind of like not running away, but kind of taken by surprise as King Kong pounces on him, ready to break the T-Rex's back. So that's pretty much what I had in mind. Now, at this point, I've drawn enough T-Rex and King Kong where I don't really need reference. So I can just like draw both of these in my sleep if I want to. So as a kid, I drew a lot of dinosaurs and especially King Kong. I drew King Kong nonstop. And so you can see me just like what it looks like scribble is just, I'm just, to a certain degree, my brain and my drawing hand is on a bit of a autopilot. So there's the T-Rex head and the neck. Now, when I think of dinosaurs, especially T-Rex, I like to think of them as essentially giant chickens. And the very important part is the balance between the head and the hind legs, because T-Rex have these tiny arms, so essentially they're like these useless thing. So once you have the hind legs and the head looking right, everything just kind of falls into place. So so I'm just like sketching out the leg. So when I'm drawing the leg, I actually envision a giant chicken, basically like an ostrich, or a cassowary. So there's just another giant bird that is related to the ostrich, that are essentially a true dinosaur. If you look at their clawed feet, it's a dinosaur feet. So I always envision that when I'm drawing dinosaur feet, especially T Rex. So with this T Rex pose, I wanted, something that is kind of like action, because everyone draws T Rex just kind of standing still. That's kind of boring. So I kind of wanted to draw a T Rex in like a mid running stance. And so you have the leg, that one leg kind of like cocked back, and one leg forward. So again, when you try to draw monsters and stuff like that, try to draw in an action pose. This is always more dramatic and more impactful when you draw these monsters, and when you draw monsters in general. Just having them in actions, for me, it just makes the picture so much better. So I'm drawing the King Kong's face, which is essentially very. When I draw King Kong's face, I think of gorillas. Now, this is where a lot of people make mistake when drawing King Kong. King Kong is not a gorilla. King Kong is actually, if you look at the original movies, King Kong is essentially kind of like a bit of a hybrid between an ape and a gorilla and man. So if I have to put it, he's more akin to a Sasquatch. It's just basically a hairy Sasquatch. That's what I like to think of as, anyway. So a lot of people, when they draw King Kong, and I personally, I see it as a mistake when they draw it as a straight up gorilla, which they shouldn't do. They should draw King Kong with a more human element. So he's tend to stand more upright, and and more human like than gorilla, where he's always like walking on knuckles. I mean, it's fine, but I prefer the original model, the Willis O'Brien model, where he stands more upright and moves more like a human, than a straight up gorilla. So the recent King Kong movies, King Kong versus Godzilla, I think they did a really nice job of making King Kong, try to move King Kong away from a straight up gorilla. And that creative decision that they made, I agree with. King Kong should be more upright, and less like a gorilla, and more human like, almost. And so there's the T Rex, the mouth. So when I'm drawing T Rex, I'm not really drawing T Rex. So it's over time, I just kind of, start changing things. So when you see a real recreation of a T Rex in the museum, they look kind of goofy, especially their face, the head anyway. So the T Rex that I draw, I kind of modified. I'm a comic book guy, so I tend to like tweak and change things to make it fit better. So there I am. I kind of drew that line to make sure that the upper and lower jaw kind of match. So when it closes mouth, it matches. So that was just like a quick a quick measuring thing. And so the underside of the mouth is, again, it's fairly easy. Just think, if you want to see the underside, just think of an alligator. An alligator is a perfect example of a dinosaur. So if you're stuck on dinosaur, look at alligators, Komodo dragons, and all these other lizards, and and you kind of get a sense of what a dinosaur should look like. Now, so when I draw a dinosaur, I like to think of them as a very agile creature, so more akin to birds than lizards. So I like to draw them like in a kind of like a quick, fast motion position. So I kind of beefed up the arms. I've always thought that the T Rex arms are just it just looks so silly, so tiny. So I tend to beef up the T Rex arm to a point where they're not even T Rex. They're more like a Allosaurus, which is a cousin of a T Rex. They tend to be smaller, have a smaller head, but a slightly bigger forearms. So as I was drawing, I guess I was leaning more toward Allosaurus than a T Rex. So there's that crucial point right there. So when you draw the feet, when they're in motion, you want the toes to kind of curl back to give it the motion that it kind of pushed off the ground. And that's something that a lot of the artists kind of like, don't draw. They kind of just draw the T Rex just standing stationary, you know, which is fine, but it kind of gets boring. So all like most animals, not all animals, but most animals, when you like break it down, they all have very similar features. So you have that leg I'm drawing. I drew the knee, the calf, and the ankle, and that lower part is essentially like an extended feet. So I'm redrawing the tail to make it balance with the overall figure, and also kind of like staying true to the anatomy, because the first position that I had, it looked like the tail was coming out of the almost the middle of the back. You don't want to do that. You want the tail to be kind of like further out away from the hind legs. And there I am drawing the feet, the foot, should I say, of King Kong. So when you're drawing King Kong, especially any ape character, make sure you draw their arm long and their leg short. And they tend to have this big barrel chest. So those are the key to drawing a realistic apish figure. So working on the eyes. I mean, I love drawing ape face. I don't know what's my fascination with apes is. I've always been like, just love King Kong, Mighty Joe Young, and the whole Planet of the Apes, the original series, and the new series. And just something about apes that just absolutely fascinated and love. A guy who does really great ape makeup is Rick Baker. He actually did the King Kong the the King Kong makeup in or he created the whole King Kong suit in the uh, the remake in the 70s. And actually he played the King Kong in the remake in the 70s. So he created the suit, the King Kong suit, and then he actually played King Kong. So he was the man in the essentially the monkey suit, the gorilla suit. And I thought that was fine. I mean, I actually saw that movie before I saw the original 1933 Willis O'Brien King Kong. So I have fond memories of the remake 1970. Was it 78? I can't remember. Might have been 77. No, it was no, it was when was it? I saw it when I was like 4 or 5, so it was 1976. It was a 1976 King Kong movie that I saw as a kid, and it really just stuck with me. And Rick Baker did a fantastic job with the whole King Kong, making a King Kong suit and playing King Kong. And then a couple of years later, I saw the Willis O'Brien 1933 original black and white King Kong, and I love that. I love that more because that stop action motion, you know, something something very charming and just really exciting about it, kind of otherworldly about it, which I love. So when you're drawing King Kong, it's just all about action. Try not to draw King Kong just standing still. Everyone draws King Kong just like standing still. So when you're drawing monsters, just giving have them in action pose. That's the to me that's a rule of thumb. And also the reason I also enjoy drawing monster is like if you make a mistake, no one can tell because monsters are these are essentially imaginary monsters. So no one can tell you if you did something wrong or not because hey, what do you know? I mean, these are I just made these up. So drawing the fist curled up. So it's like the ape fingers are actually fascinating, like chimpanzees and actually gorilla hand. Their fingers are it tapers to a point, which is fascinating. And they have a lot of padding. So, so when you draw gorilla, King Kong's fist, gorillas in general, make sure they're very human-like, but with extra padding and with kind of like pointy fingers. An elongated hand. So I'm just drawing the hair. Hair is always fun to draw. I guess that's why I like drawing gorillas and werewolves because something about the hair, just kind of the hair just makes it, I don't know, a little bit more real, I guess, in my eyes. And I love the pencil. The pencil is like my favorite drawing tool because you can just create crisp lines or you can just smudge it and have the soft lines. The pencil is a very versatile tool for an artist, and I just enjoy just drawing with a pencil. So again, I'm adding the shadow because I have, at this point, I kind of have the shadow at a 11 o'clock position. And just using that as a light source, the direction of the light source, I start laying in the shadows. Just the intercostal muscle. Adding abs, like gorillas don't really have like a six pack, but just having showing like a hint of a six pack is always just makes it more makes King Kong look more powerful. Even though gorillas, gorillas and large primates, they tend to have like a big old gut because they're eating mainly plant. They're mainly plant eaters, so they have all these foliage, roughage in their stomach. This is how I draw. I tend to like kind of scribble. Like I know some people like to draw like basic block shapes and stuff like that. No, for me, this is my natural method. I kind of scribble. I guess there's no other better way to say it. Is like, if you saw from the beginning, I tend to just like quickly lay out these scribbly lines, and have like a rough image in mind. So the King Kong head. Now, the gorilla has this like it's almost like a two layer, a two level head. So it's almost like a chair, and so that's what gorillas look like. I try to avoid that. Yeah, King Kong. I try to have with my version of King Kong tend to be more of a sloped head instead of having this kind of like a high chair, like a back chair look. I try to avoid that and give it more of a rounded and slightly pointed head. So there I am drawing the finger. You can see that I'm drawing the finger kind of pointed and kind of like the finger it tapers into almost like a point. Adding the shading to give it the illusion of hair. So if you notice, as I'm drawing and erasing constantly. So this is why I enjoyed the sketching, the penciling phase, because it's just you can make mistakes and just to play around with it to see if it works or not. And if it doesn't work, you can just erase it and do something else. So as like that old saying goes, if it looks right, it's right. If it looks wrong, it's wrong. And if it looks wrong, then erase it. And the pencil stage is a very forgiving stage. So you can just erase it and start over. So don't be shy to make mistakes, and if you do make a mistake, just erase it and and redo it. There it is, King Kong's obliques. Now, a lot of you guys are wondering, how did I learn anatomy of a gorilla? And the gorilla and humans are very similar. I mean, they're almost identical. So once you know the basic human anatomy, you can draw the great primates, easily, because they are essentially our cousins, and they have a very similar, almost identical body structure and musculature. And I learned how to draw anatomy by looking at a lot of bodybuilding magazines. Because I used to wrestle and lift weights when I was in high school, and I still do. And I just love you know you know the whole weightlifting scene. And then so when you're weightlifting, you kind of understand and visualize and identify different muscle group and parts. And so it actually helps you in your drawing, especially drawing human anatomy and superheroes, because all the superheroes are basically bodybuilders in tights. So there I am just drawing the T-Rex neck. So I have this T-Rex toy by my in my studio that I look at from time to time if I get, if I get stuck on T-Rex anatomy. So I like to glance at it and and figure things out. So with the T-Rex, I mean, there's a lot of like, if you look at Komodo dragon, they have this like kind of really gnarly loose skin around their neck. And so I like to kind of like think of that when I'm drawing the T-Rex neck. And also look at my the T-Rex toy that I have in my studio, just to kind of like refresh my memory, visual memory. There you go. So the way I angle the T-Rex is he's kind of like coming slightly forward and down. So you should see the dorsal, the backbone of the T-Rex. Again, once you draw these animals, these two things constantly, you kind of could see things three-dimensionally. And that just comes with training. So don't get all like don't despair. If you practice and study enough, you should able to start seeing things three-dimensional in a three-dimensional way. So here's the rib cage, cleaning up the arm a little bit. Again, so when you're drawing dinosaur, at the joint point, you should kind of like give it like a folded folds of skin and stuff like that. It just give it that extra realistic detail. That's just like really that that just looks good. Just having that extra fold of skin and realistic fold. Just give it that the monsters, the dinosaurs, just give it that extra the extra spice, I guess. Just makes it makes it fun to draw. So this King Kong, I realize, is kind of small if you're using the T-Rex as a size scale, because the King Kong is supposed to be 40 feet tall, but in this one, I think it's smaller than that. It's more like 25 feet, because a large T-Rex is from head to tail over 40 feet. So if you're standing in this, yeah, I think it's more like a 25 feet King Kong that I drew. I know it's just kind of it's just nerd nerd knowledge. But I love King Kong. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna deny it. I love King Kong. So and that's the funny thing in the movie. They have various different sizes for King Kong. I think in the 1933 movie, they made King Kong in like three different sizes. One was like 20 some feet. And I guess when they compare it in the New York scene, when he's flipping the train, that King Kong was about, yeah, like not quite 40 feet. And in some sequence, they made it 40 feet. So if you really pay attention, the size of a King Kong kind of fluctuates based on the scale of, the him standing next to buildings and stuff like that. It's actually kind of funny. Drawing the neck muscle. The guy who always drew this like really great veins and muscle rippling kind of thing was Bernie Ricin. Bernie Ricin and Frank Frazetta. But I thought Bernie really did a marvelous job. So if you look at his Swamp Thing, especially that Swamp Thing cover, was it number 8 or 9, where he's coming out of the swamp. You can see all these like vines, kind of acting like a vein. So there's a quick trick I just showed you where I erase out the pencil line, and to give it that kind of like the vein skin fold kind of look. So right there, I'm kind of like figuring out how the quadricep of the T-Rex will look. And there's the hip bone. And just adding little details on the tail. So back in the 90s, right out of college, I started having, before I joined Marvel, and I was just middle of doing Liberty Meadows, I actually pitched a King Kong story, King Kong versus Tarzan story, to Dark Horse. Now, I actually did try out for Dark Horse as their Tarzan artist, but I was rejected. So later on, once I had more confidence, I pitched with my friend Al Gross. We pitched a King Kong versus Tarzan story, where King Kong's love of blonde, whatever, came from that story where King Kong kind of falls in love with Tarzan's Jane. So I thought it was a kind of a fun story, which took place where with a smaller King Kong, almost like a juvenile King Kong, and in Skull Island with Tarzan and Jane. But Dark Horse rejected it and turned it down. They said at that time, I remember Mike Richardson basically telling me that Dave Stevens was already working on a Rocketeer King Kong story, which I found out later, Dave denied, you know. So I think what happened was Dave was kind of like toying with the idea, and then he might like mentioned it, and then Mike Richardson at Dark Horse kind of took it as as something concrete. But with Dave, Dave Stevens, a brilliant artist, he's a bit of a daydreamer. So unless he actually put it on paper, he's not gonna do it. And so they rejected our King Kong Tarzan story, which I still think it will make a pretty decent story. So I'm adding the scales and the texture and the hand, the claws, adding more shadows. Decided to add like a little, like a like another giant ape skull to give it a nod that this T Rex is in King Kong territory, or maybe his family graveyard. Yeah, so when you're drawing ape, the brow ridge is the most important. That pretty much once you have the brow ridge, it will you're halfway there. You know, it just that brow ridge kind of makes the ape. So adding like the kind of like the bit of the dust cloud as they're kind of like jumping and fighting. That kind of adds an extra level of dimension and and just kind of realism. So just adding more dust cloud. Just reinforcing the shadows on King Kong. Yeah, just more texture on the fur. There's a hint of a tricep there. And the separation between the deltoid and the arm and the bicep. And there's more hip. So basically, I'm just kind of make sure that the other leg is completely hidden from by the T Rex body. So at this point, I'm just adding finishing touches, just reinforcing the lines. So I just had to add some pterodactyls in the background to give it that, because they are after on Skull Island, so there's a lot of flying dinosaurs and stuff like that. Just having fun. So there you go. In celebration of my 100th YouTube video, here's King Kong, my favorite character to draw. Oh, man, I forgot to draw Andero. I'm supposed to draw Andero in the foreground.